Hey there, Sassy Squad. Welcome back to Sassy University, where our lessons are like your favorite classes, packed with knowledge, no beating around the bush, and full of practical examples you can apply today. I hope that's what makes your favorite class. We're here to teach, you're here to learn, so let's make every minute count. And we go through things pretty quickly. There's a lot of value in these videos, so feel free to pause and take some notes, whatever you need to soak this all up. Today, we're talking about one of our passions and something Sassy does really well, if I may say so myself, logos and branding. This video is going to be perfect for business owners, whether you have a logo or not, and for designers eager to master the art of creating logos that inspire us every day. But before we dive in, let's talk credentials, am I right? Who are we to talk? What makes us qualified? Well, in our first 2 years of business, we've designed over 30 logos and have a first-time approval rate of about 92%. Ask any designer out there, that is not easy to do.
This is phenomenal.
So we'll link our Behance profile below so you can check out our work for yourself and you be the judge. But for now, let's dive in. First, you need to understand the power a logo has so you can give it the importance it deserves. We can't continue until you do that. Your logo isn't just a pretty image. In fact, you can have a really pretty image or graphic that makes for a really terrible logo. And we'll talk more about that later. This is the face of your company. It has the power to add value to anything it's on, like Nike, Apple, or Chanel, right? Like a lip balm costs $3. You add a Chanel logo on it and all of a sudden it jumps to $56. That's the one big goal, is to have a logo that people recognize, remember, trust, and that resonates with them. And it's all about first impressions. We know how important that is. So let's make sure that you get it right off the bat. So what makes a logo unforgettable? In a sea of brands, your logo should stand out and stick in people's minds. So we study other logos in the industry to design something that sticks out, but that also looks like it belongs with the other logos in that industry. Do you realize how hard it is to make something that both sticks out and looks like it belongs? Your logo needs to be memorable. It needs to be simple because it's much easier to remember a simple design like this than something like this. So that's why a great logo needs to be simple. Next up is adaptability. Your logo needs to be like a chameleon. It needs to blend and look good on many different things. So a logo designer has to kind of predict the future and imagine all the ways the logo could be used, ensuring it remains legible and comprehensible no matter what. So business cards, uniforms, billboards, promo items, a pen, a car, the list goes on, and your logo needs to look good on all of that. Before I teach you how to identify a bad logo, it's time for a quick challenge. If you've got a logo, drop it below in the comments and tell us the story behind it. What inspired it? We'd really like to know. And if you're in the process of creating one, tell us how that's going. Now, back to the video. So how do you identify a problematic or a bad logo? We've all seen them. Logos that are confusing, they're too literal, too complicated, or too full of things. Logos with fonts that are too thin, or with one piece of text that's too big and the other piece of text that's too small and they're right next to each other, like this one. When we want to shrink this logo down, that smaller line of text is going to become practically illegible. Or how about this one? Try printing that in one color. Or this one. Embroidering that is going to be a nightmare. Forget about it. We see a lot of mistakes like this with new businesses, and we often hear, "It'll do for now," and we cringe because all we hear when we hear that is money being lost. Let me explain. This is huge, so really pay attention. When you open a business, you should be cheering and hoping for it to go right? So you're gonna design a bunch of things like business cards and uniforms and other things that are all going to have your logo on them, right? You guys are following? Now, 1 or 2 years later with business growth, you realize that this logo just isn't working and you decide to finally invest and do it right. This is called a rebrand, you're rebranding. And that's when you realize you're not just remaking a logo, you're remaking everything that has that old logo on it, and it costs so much. It's such a headache. Uniforms, business cards, your website, maybe a vehicle wrap. Your logo should, if you're doing it correctly, it should be applied everywhere for brand recognition. You want people to see it everywhere and not escape it even if they wanted to. So you put it everywhere. That's the correct thing to do. And now you're remaking the logo 2 to 3 years down the road and you realize what an expense it is. And we don't want you to go through that. That's why we wanted to release this video really quickly. It's really important information, so pay attention. So now you know why a good logo is so important, and you decide to leave it to the professionals. Hopefully, that means we'll be hearing from you soon, but if not, I want to prepare you to find a good designer for your project. And if you are a designer, this is what you should be doing when engaging with a client on a logo or branding project. So working with a designer, the golden rules. How to find a good designer for your project. They should be asking you plenty of questions to understand who's going to be buying from you, where these people are going to be coming from, like where you're going to be targeting people, who your competitors are, what your brand personality is like, what voice, what tone you're going to be using. And if they're not asking you those questions, run, because it could cost you thousands down the road. So check their portfolio, set a fair, realistic budget. Make sure you understand everything you're getting with your payment before you begin. Realistic expectations are everything. So now let's address a common misconception about logos. Now, you see this? This is how much your personal preference is gonna dictate what your logo looks like. It's like this much. It's not a lot. And that's because your logo is not for you. Part of our design process includes making sure that our clients understand that their personal taste plays a very minuscule role in what the logo will look like in the end. Why? Because it's supposed to appeal to the business's client persona, and that's usually not the business owner. It can be, but it's usually not. So an example is a client who wants to open a taxi business, and this is kind of a dated example, but they want to open a taxi business. Now, they've never ridden in a taxi. They don't plan on ever riding in a taxi. They just know that it's a profitable business and they want to open one. Why should their personal preference and their personal tastes dictate what the logo for the business is going to look like? They're not going to be the ones using the service. They don't understand what these people need or want. That's why your personal preference should not take part in dictating what the final logo will look like. Next up, something else aspiring designers and business owners need to know, and that it breaks our heart, is the deceptive simplicity of iconic logos. That's a mouthful, but have you ever looked at a logo and thought, I could have done that? That's too simple. But when you think of iconic logos like Apple, Nike, or McDonald's, they're all extremely simple and give the impression that anyone could have done it. But that simplicity, it's calculated and it's genius. It's about striking gold and balance and avoiding common pitfalls. And I say that it breaks our heart to hear this, when we deliver a logo and we hear, that's too simple. It looks like I could have done it. But we really don't hear that anymore, because we understand, and that's what I want you to understand, is that realistic expectations are the key to successful transactions that lead to lasting relationships between designers and the client. So we make sure that they understand off the bat, we're going to be delivering something extremely simple, and that is the goal. Now let's go over things to avoid. Steer clear of trends that will date your logo, like overly complex designs and being too literal. I'll give the automotive industry as an example since we market for them so much. If you Google auto body logo, your screen will be flooded by logos with pictures of cars, or like silhouettes of cars and steering wheels, and then like spray guns, and then there's like paint coming out of the spray guns, and then there's like drops of paint. And the names are all things like Bob's Auto Repair, Best collision repair, quick finish body shop. So the description of the business is literally inside the name. You don't need to reinforce that in the graphic with a car or a spray gun or anything like that. It makes your logo too literal. It's just unnecessary. And it's our pet peeve. I could maybe agree with a literal graphic icon if the name wasn't so descriptive, but the names are always really descriptive and you just don't need it. Like think of Nike. Nike's logo is a swoosh. You know, it's abstract. It means speed and agility, but it's not a sneaker. If you didn't know about Apple and you saw the name Apple and you saw their logo, you would think it's a farm, because it's a literal apple. It's not a computer, it's not an iPhone, it's nothing like that. That would be too literal for their industry. So logos are supposed to be more abstract and easier to remember. Simple, remember that. So that's a wrap. I think maybe for the next video, we'll talk about the difference between branding and logos, because you can have a logo and not really have a brand, and that's not gonna get you where you wanna get. So Sassy Squad, we hope this video illuminated the path to a logo that not only looks good, but that works hard for your brand. Before we sign off, much love to everyone who watched until the end. Less love for the people who didn't, but I guess they'll never know anyways. You guys are the real MVPs, and if this video was insightful or useful to you in any way, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next class from Sassy University. Until next time, keep your marketing sharp, your logos sharper, and remember, marketing should be sassy.